Why should I care about DevOps? DevOps is ridiculously important. And remember, DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable the continuous delivery of value to our end users. Now, once again, the most important step here, or point here, is we need to be able to continuously deliver value. So why is it so important for us to continuously deliver value? Well, the speed of business today is so freaking fast that we have to be able to continuously deliver value to be able to keep up with the changes, with everything that's happening. So here's the key concept that you have to remember. If you are not implementing DevOps best practices, your competitors either have or they will, and when they do, they will absolutely out-innovate you. And this isn't just DevOps theory. We've been doing DevOps long enough where we know this is fact. So why is DevOps important? Because you have to continuously deliver value. If you don't, you will be out-innovated, and if you get out-innovated, you become obsolete. And none of us wants to be obsolete.
Hey everybody, welcome back to AzureFunBytes. My name's Jay Gordon. You are once again joining me. Every week we come together. We talk about the fundamentals that make up Azure, products that help you get the most out of Azure, different projects that are in the open source world that really help you extend what you can do on Azure. We've talked about so many different things. It's pretty incredible. And so every week I try to bring on guests. I try to have someone come here and take part in explaining all these different things that really make up Azure. And so this week we're going to go and we're going to get out of our comfort zone a little. And while we've talked about different types of architectures, we've looked at different methodologies of deploying into Azure. Today, we're going to look at something that I find to be really critical for massive distribution of applications. And we'll learn a little bit about it, but let's get started on what today's topic is. And it's microservices and a product in the open source world known as Dapr. So what exactly is Dapr? Well, before my guest gives us a huge rundown, let's watch this.
As a developer, you're asked to create resilient, scalable, distributed applications as microservices. But you face the same challenges over and over again. Challenges such as recovering state after failures, managing secrets, or discovering and securely calling other microservices. What if there was a solution that allowed you to focus only on building your application and not solving these distributed system challenges? That's where Dapr comes in, the Distributed Application Runtime. It's an event-driven, portable runtime for easily building microservices on cloud or edge. Dapr meets you where you are today. You can use Dapr with any language, on any development framework, and run anywhere. At the heart of Dapr are building blocks that encapsulate industry best practices and simplify the challenges faced when building microservices. Through building blocks such as service-to-service invocation, state management, or pub/sub messaging, Dapr provides consistent APIs, abstracting away the implementation details and keeping your code simple and portable. You can use Dapr with your existing applications, starting with a single building block and incrementally adding more when needed. Let's say you're building an app that requires you to store state. Using the simple state management API, you can quickly create long-running, resilient, stateful services. Dapr does the heavy lifting for you. Your code remains simple and agnostic to any specific store implementation, and you can easily swap out what's under the hood without changing your code. And just to make life a little bit easier, Dapr provides extensive security and observability by default, encrypting requests between services and integrating with standards such as OpenTelemetry for tracing, metrics, and logs that can be visualized by any monitoring tool. So, how does it work? Dapr runs alongside your application as a sidecar. Whether on your local dev box, on an edge device, or in the cloud. When hosting your application on Kubernetes, Dapr runs as another container in your application's pods. And when your application scales, Dapr scales with it. Dapr is an open source project with a growing worldwide community of developers working together. Want to learn more? Simply get started at dapr.io.
And to help us learn a lot more about Dapper, I've got Mark Fussell. Hi, Mark. You are our product lead with that Dapper open source project team. And I want to thank you very much for being part of this today.
That's fantastic to be here, Jay, and I'm excited to talk to you and tell you all about Dapper and how you can get started with it.
Great. And so what I wanted to do is just make sure that all of our viewers know that we've got ways to kind of get comments from you, get information for our viewers. So if we want to go ahead and somehow or another get you a question about the product or something like that, you're more than welcome. There are a couple ways you can use your local chat if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch or Twitter, or if you're paying attention, we've got ourselves here on Learn TV. And on Learn TV, what you can do is you can leave questions right to the side. We can go ahead and get it, and we'll make some announcements and other things right in the Learn TV portal. So that's aka.ms/Learn TV. Looking forward to hearing from you today. But now, it's time to hear from you, Mark. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of get rid of this little branding image here. And I wanted to talk to you mostly about first, how long have you been part of the open source world?
Well, I first got involved with the open source world through a number of different projects, but in terms of Dapper, it was about 2 years ago when we first started a project. And then we actually first released Dapper into the open source world in October of 2019. So that's when it first came out. And since then, there's just been an explosion of the community just diving in and helping us. And that's where I sort of really got deep in with the open source community, helping build Dapper as a product, as a tool that you can use, and we've just had a huge community response.
Gotcha. And how long have you been with Microsoft now?
Oh, I've been Microsoft a long time. I've been Microsoft 20 years.
That's amazing.
All the way back in the XML days. I lived through the XML fury and excitement, and through many other products through that still. And I've been in Azure for over 10 years, building various different platforms inside Azure.
We're a developer company. I think that's what we've made really obvious in the last few years. And so one of the big things that developers are really counting on nowadays are the ability to create services that make more sense for distribution. And that comes up with today's big subject is microservices. And microservices are an architectural approach to building applications where each core function or service is built and deployed independently. And so the big difference there, and I'm going to bring this up, Mark, and we can kind of take a look at this right here. And I think this is a really great way of looking at it, of the difference between something like with a state in a monolith as opposed to a state in kind of a microservices approach. Another great one, I love this one as well, just in general. Kind of like how everything would look as it comes together to build a distributed microservice application approach. And we could talk a little bit more about the deeper aspects of Dapper and how it does it. But I wanted to show everybody one big thing, and I think that this will really kind of let you know how the Azure aspect really fits in. And it's this part, which I feel is really helpful to kind of see all these different services coming together, bringing you an application that it's going to be well distributed using Docker, using load balancers, your cloud app, AKS, you name it, all these different ways of distributing your app. And so that getting started, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about how Dapper makes microservices easier.
Well, that was a great intro. I mean, effectively what you've pointed out is that the modern way now to build scalable distributed apps and build things as services is with this microservices architecture. And that's because you're able to be more agile. You can independently version and scale these individual smaller services. But of course, with that comes with some complexity. You've got more things to deal with. You've got more moving parts. And that's where Dapper really comes along and helps you build your applications. That's what I'm going to show you today. Effectively, the way to think about it is that platforms like Kubernetes are a great hosting infrastructure for things like microservice applications, but they do nothing for you as a developer. And so as a developer, you now have to come along and build these things, and you need the tools to help you do that.
Yeah, and so I brought up like the big idea of Dapper here in this particular slide, and I think it really makes a ton of sense because you're talking about any particular application code as we see at that top layer, and then APIs to actually get it distributed, and then APIs to eventually get it to our cloud. And in our case, we're going to bring it to Azure. But what it looks like to me, and at that bottom portion, is Gnosticism. And I think that that's a lot of reasons why people choose something like Kubernetes or any sort of like non-vendor specific infrastructure as code.
Yes. Well, actually, I'll show you the slides as well. But the key thing to Dapper as well is that, yes, it's platform agnostic. It'll run across many different clouds. It'll run across locally. It'll run across Kubernetes, but it'll also run across other distributed systems platforms as well. And the key are those things in the middle there, those building blocks. And that's what I'm kind of sort of going to dive into, because those are the things where we've taken best practices and codified them into things that you as a developer can use with consistent APIs that are exposed over HTTP or gRPC, if that matter. And then you can either use those APIs directly, or you can actually take advantage of language SDKs that are part of the Dapper project on top of that.
And so Raphael asked us if Dapper supports ASP.NET, and we were able to answer that question right away. You know, it's any platform, any language. And so, or I should say any framework, any like host and any language. So you're able to kind of I should check off a bunch of boxes that we really think are necessary when we're talking about.
Dapper actually has deep integration with ASP.NET. And I can show you and point out some examples of that. So not only do we have C# libraries that show you that, and I'm going to give you an example of a demo, but we've integrated further Dapper into ASP.NET directly. So actually things that you'll be able to do with those building blocks that you couldn't do before with ASP.NET. So say, for example, in ASP.NET, you want to build a controller, and that's your typical thing where you have an endpoint. You can now build stateful controllers inside those, or you can make eventing mechanisms publish trigger inside those. So yes, there's deep integration with ASP.NET.
Great.
And I can take you through that example.
Sure. And from what I know of Dapper is, and I think that this is really, really useful, it's in all the show notes, is how easy just installing the binary is locally or in your VM or wherever it is you want to do your Dapper work. The point is that simplicity is key in getting these types of things kicked off, if you will.
Yes.
And from what I've seen of the installation of Dapper and even your README, or I shouldn't say your hello world example, if you will, about storing secrets and retrieving them, it's not a tremendous amount of overhead for an individual developer or even an ops person to kind of jump in.
Yes. I mean, would you like me to show you some more demos and dive into this? Let's do this. Okay, let me share my desktop here. Let me share my desktop here a moment, and let's pick up this screen here, and hopefully you'll be able to now see a deck here that I'm just about to pull up. I just want to kind of pull up this one slide here first, because it is good just to kind of layer a little bit on top of what you were saying. Dapper's goals were to give you these best practice building blocks, and you can use it with any language or framework, and it's a portable application runtime. And it's community driven. That's super key to all this. So that the community is very deeply engaged with all of this. And as you pointed out, these building blocks help you. And we're going to go through some of these examples of how I can store some state inside here, how I can do publish and subscribe, how I can have external triggers trigger my code inside the application itself. And of course, deal with things like observability and secrets that are key for building these distributed applications.
Absolutely. If we look at the world nowadays without observability to see exactly when it's happening, how it's happening, why it's happening, it really reduces the reasoning why we would use these services.
Correct. So effectively what Dapper dives you do, it gives you these easy to use building blocks you can do in languages of your choice. But the key thing here that makes your life so easy as a developer is that you treat a piece of one of these building blocks through its API as a local host call. So I can simply say, I want to take advantage of saving some state to make a stateful long-running application. So I can take advantage of this state API, and if I call using the state API, and I can store some state, for example, a particular item into my state store of my choice. And I'll show you how this is pluggable, how I can plug in different ways of storing my state. Or say, for example, I wanted to call onto a different service that was running somewhere inside my environment. I don't know where it's running. All I know there's a cart service running inside there, and I want to call a new order method. You as a developer can just simply create these local APIs that you call that say, go off and call a new order method and invoke this method on this cart, and it does it all for you. And that's super key to Dapper. That's how it provides you this powerful capabilities where you as a developer just simply craft local requests like this, and Dapper does all the heavy lifting for you.
Great.
Let me show you how you get started with this then, and we'll come back into how it works. So look, here I'm going to walk you through here. I'm just going to walk you through, if I can go back to my browser, I'm going to walk you through the Dapper getting started guide here. So here it is. If you go to our Dapper docs, these are our docs inside here. Do note that we should go to a latest release. In fact, yesterday we were super excited because we just gave out the RC1 preview. So you can get the latest release that came out now. So if you go here to dapperdocs.io and choose the latest release, I'm just going to show you how you can get started inside here. So if you go inside the docs here, the first thing you can do is that you can go install the Dapper CLI. And with the Dapper CLI, whether you're on a Linux or Windows or Mac box, if you just run this command here, it pulls the Dapper CLI down onto your machine. And what that then means is that you have a Dapper CLI running, and it allows you to, see here's the Dapper CLI. It allows you to have a number of different CLI commands. So for example, I can initialize the Dapper environment on my local machine, and I can run a local application and things like this. So if I just do, you'll see here, I've got Dapper installed on this particular version at the moment. I've actually got Dapper at this latest version installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to uninstall Dapper. So I'm just going to uninstall because I have installed already. And I can just do here, I'm just going to take it off my machine because I want to show you how easy it is to put on your machine. I've pulled it all down. And now if I want to, I can just, you'll see that I have just a Dapper CLI command running inside here. If I want to set up my Dapper environment, all I have to do is do Dapper. And let's just go back to the docs here. You go to the Dapper here. If I go to installing Dapper locally, you'll see that I want to pull in a particular version here. So you just do Dapper init with the runtime version that you want. So I'm going to do Dapper init and install a particular runtime version. And this pulls down all the latest runtime for Dapper, sets it up on my local machine, and also sets up some local tools, some containers to help me storing some of my state and helping me also do some diagnostics. So you see that it installs Redis on my local machine, and it also installs Zipkin on my local machine for diagnostics. So if I just look at those, you'll just see that, let me just do a clear here, so you have a full screen here. You'll see that if I look at the running state, you'll see that I've got Dapper installed, and then I've got this local state store. And this just helps me take advantage of using some of the Dapper commands I'm going to use. So there I am, I'm set up, I'm ready to go, I'm done. I've got Dapper CLI installed. Let's try out some example of just using Dapper as APIs, just to give you a feel of what this is like. So let's keep going through this quick start here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch the Dapper run command. So you'll see here that I can actually launch a Dapper instance running on my machine, and I can just use this Dapper run command. And the way it works is I launch a named application inside here, and I give it a port. So here I am. I'm just going to run this on my machine.
And that's an internal naming convention, correct? The my app. That's just what you're naming it within Dapper, and that eventually can become something more, correct?
Yeah, that's the name of my application. So I think here, if I switch to another terminal, and if I do Dapper list, you'll see here that I've got a version of my applications running here. And this is a version of Dapper that I've just named this instance of Dapper running my app. That's all I've got.
So you get kind of like a PS output, if you will, or like a process tree of commands that are coming out. So people with, I guess, some like Linux or Unix experience in general look at this and say, this makes sense to me.
Yes, exactly. So now I've got Dapper here running on my machine. You see that when I ran it here, it gave me some output about how it was running, how it started up and what it was doing. And now up and running here, I can now take advantage of these Dapper APIs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply take advantage. I'm going to take advantage of a local state store. So that Redis state store I stored on my machine, I can actually use it now because I've configured it as a state store that I can use. So if I I now simply use one of these Dapr curl commands. You'll see now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call onto this local host, and I'm going to call onto this state store. Now, this state store was configured to point to my local Dapr state store through what's called a component model. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to store a key and a name with a value of Bruce Wayne inside here. And I'm just going to say, Dapr, I'm going to call you to store this state. So it did. Dapr has now stored this inside my Redis state store. And you're going, well, okay, show me what that looks like. So I've got a little browser here inside my VS Code here that allows me to look at my Redis state store. That's the one that I've got installed locally. So if I actually now just refresh this, you'll see that actually I will get, let me just try that again. I will get, let me just kill this again and add a new instance of my Redis state store here in a moment. So let's just do Redis, let's just get this working. Local host, because that's where I'm connected to, port 609, local password, and let's just query this again. And if not, I will show you another way of doing it. And if I just query,
no problem. Hey, when you do it and you do it live, not everything is expected to happen exactly the way you expected it.
Well, you can actually directly attach to the Redis state store itself instead. So you can actually do a Docker exec here. So instead here, we'll just jump into the Redis state store this way, and we can just do a keys star. And we'll see here, there's my name of my application that got stored and name inside it all. So this is kind of shows that inside the Redis state store, I saved this particular key and I saved this value inside it all. But that's just looking inside the Redis state store itself. What I can do instead, I can actually take advantage of Dapr here to do, again, call onto its local host command here and just say, well, I'm going to get hold of that name thing that I stored here earlier, just retrieve that data back for me. And so here we are, I've got the name back, Bruce Wayne again.
Gotcha.
So super simple, just to kind of take advantage. And under the covers here, Dapr is doing all the hard work of storing the state and recovering it all for me.
Well, I want to just remind our viewers that we are doing a live stream where they can interact with us. And one of the ways they can is right here through the poll. And right now we're asking question, are you implementing microservices architecture in your company? If I don't, or if you do, please say. If you don't. If you've got something else going on, let us know. Looks like you got some advice, Mark, from Mystic. And Mystic says you got the port wrong. Which, like I said, when you do it live, these things can happen.
Oh, okay. I thought I got the port right inside there, but okay.
Thank you so much, Mystic. We appreciate your help.
Yeah. When I set up my Redis inside here, I thought I did. Let's try this. I thought I got a local host. I'm pretty sure I got the port right, but that's okay. We'll come back to this and we'll see other examples inside here. But that Redis Explorer is one way of doing it all. But let's keep going on this, because so this is just a simple way of showing my the use of Dapper's API. But what I want to do is take this into an application now, because all I was doing here is I was running Dapr by itself. You want to know how is it I want to use it inside my application. So inside here, I wrote, let's just hide this down here a moment. Inside here, I've written a simple .NET application. And if I open up this .NET application, one of the great things about the Dapr project is it actually has not only HTTP calls that you can use, but it actually also has client libraries for different languages, whether that's .NET or Go or Python. In fact, we have many different SDKs. So here I've actually now taken advantage of pulling in and creating a .NET application. And you'll see here now that I've pulled in the Dapr client API, and this is just a NuGet API. So if you actually look in the project file here, I just pulled in a version from NuGet. And so now I can actually go in, instead of calling HTTP calls, you'll see that actually I have a full list of all those different types of endpoints that I can call those APIs inside Dapr, whether I'm saving secrets or whether I'm saving state or I'm triggering external systems through bindings and triggers onto my code. So here I've just taken advantage of get state to be able to save the state into my state store. And then I've also been able to save the state. So here I've got a little app here that just runs as as a counter, saving it into my Redis state store locally. So what I'm going to do, now I've got this little app running here. I can actually go into I'm going to open up a Windows command here this time. Switch out of here. You see that I've actually got Dapper installed under Windows as well as Linux. So it's multi-OS. Here's the same CLI inside it all. But now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to, you'll see that I'm in the directory for where my project is. So what I'm going to do now is actually I can run both Dapper and my application together. So now I can do Dapper run, and I can launch an instance of Dapper. But this time, I'm actually going to use .NET run inside here. So this will actually run my application, and at the same time, launch Dapper as a sidecar next to it all. So now my application is running, Dapper is running next to it all as well. And what I will do is that this will now start to save instances of my counter into my Redis Explorer. So hopefully now, if I look into my Redis Explorer again, did I still get that port wrong inside here? Because my Redis Explorer, yeah. But this is the counter now saving it into my Redis Explorer here. So you're able to see this and saving it all into the state inside here and keeping this all. And the good thing about this is if I kill this and actually start up my application again, the state gets recovered. So here it is, I've killed my application, I've started back up again, but I've made a stateful, long-running application using Dapper. And now what you're doing here is that the counter has been recovered and I've made a stateful app. And this takes all the hard work of creating those stateful applications for you. You can simply take advantage of building these stateful apps. Now the question is like, okay, great, but where did you set up how it got saved that state and where it was connected? And the answer is that Dapper has this component model where I can see now where it was saving in a different location. And inside the state model here, it was actually, you see that actually I set up Dapper here to store into the state store. And I now actually realize now that what I was doing is I'm not saving this locally inside here, but actually I configured this to actually save this into a Cosmos DB state store. So you'll see that inside my code here,
document database there I saw. And for those who are curious, Cosmos DB will be a subject on this very, very soon. We're going to be doing one, so it's really cool that you brought that up. Hey, could we take a question really quick?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Sure. So we've got someone, LTK, says, I'm trying to code a recommender system in Python, and I have a data set, and I need to build a machine learning system. So I guess that what they're asking is, will they be able to build something like with a data set specifically, so it's distributed and available with Dapper, I suppose? I mean, you can tell me, NLTK. I think he asked if we can use NLP in the process. So I'm not too sure. Maybe you have an answer.
Well, I think if you're wanting to reach out and use Dapper to call onto other services like language natural processing in order to do sentiment processing, for example, and then save that back. In fact, we have a great demo which shows it's taking lots of Twitter input from a Twitter binding, and then it calls out onto natural language processing, and it does a sentiment analysis of that and saves that state. So yes, you can certainly combine services like natural language processing and cognitive services with, for example, saving the results of those together. Dapper itself doesn't have anything built in for machine learning in it yet. It's more like trying to integrate between, for example, other external systems where you may get some calls that are coming in, and how you may take advantage of cognitive services as part of that. There's a great demo I can point to you later on that sort of thing.
Very cool.
I can see now actually why I was having a difficult time of not seeing this inside this Redis, because actually what this was doing is I said state store, and I'd actually configured this because I forgot to switch my demo back to push this into Cosmos DB. So let's just switch over here a moment and actually look in our Cosmos DB state store, because here I have my Cosmos DB state store. I'll just make this a little larger here. And
great, thank you so much.
If I just refresh this here, you actually see that this Dapper counter is actually being saved into my Cosmos DB state store, because what I did was I simply switched the component that my code was using. So you see that in my code, I said, don't use the Redis state store anymore. Now you can take advantage of Cosmos instead. And all I had to do was say, point to a Cosmos component inside here. And so you'll see that I got my Cosmos information inside here. But let's switch it back in the code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my state store here. I'm going to switch this back to being the name state store here. I'm going to put a different value inside of the Cosmos DB one here. And now if I run this one here locally again, you'll see that the counter will restart from 1 again, because it's no longer storing into Cosmos, but it's actually storing into my local state store. And all I've done is I've switched it back to Redis. And now you'll see inside my Redis state store that this will be the place where I'm saving it instead. So without me changing anything about my code, I've now, I've simply said inside my code, I want to use state store. Whether that state store is a local Redis one or is a Cosmos DB one, I just had to switch out a component model, and Dapr did all the heavy lifting of where that state got stored for me instead. So that's pretty cool.
I so far, I am learning so much. This is incredibly useful information. So thank you so much, Mark. So we've gotten to the point where we're understanding how local state works. What happens when you need to bring that state, say, into an online kind of situation where you're live in prod? Where does that kind of go from there?
Okay, well, let's switch out of this demo then, and let's kind of go on to looking at. Let me just show you.
Unless you got more to show me here, I don't want to rush you. If you got more to show.
Well, one thing I also wanted to show that I thought was great around all of this is you'll see that I've got my application running inside here, and it's.
So you have the oh wow, so
yeah,
this is really cool. And is there VS Code specific extension?
There's a VS Code specific extension that you can actually take advantage of. I won't show you that today, but you can actually take advantage of VS Code extension. It will actually allow you to take advantage of the Dapper CLI inside all this.
Wow.
But so that's pretty cool in terms of how you can, you'll see this sort of Dapper little icon. It allows you to do some of the CLI commands and also be able to launch your application into a debugging environment inside here. But yeah, let's go on to your question about this, because I think that's a great thing to do now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch. I'm just going to stop here at this little moment. I'm just going to go back to the docs, because I just want to show you how you can keep exploring. Because what happens is that you can now go on and you can go and look at some of the quick starts that we have inside here. And these quick starts help you learn at the next level about how you can run these things and make your applications a little bit more complex and run them inside production environments. So we're going to move on now to one of these Hello World quick starts inside here, which I'll run locally, and then I'll show you a little bit more about how that runs inside a production environment. But here we go. This is a quick start now that doesn't just have one application that's saving some state. It has two. So we're going to see a Python application that's running. And of course, I'm trying to also show now that Dapper is multi-language, which is key. You can come at this from the language of your choice. And it has a Node application here, and the Python application sends some orders into the Node application. And this is key because now the Python application uses the Dapper invoke building block in order to discover where two applications are running inside your environment. And then just as before, the Node application stores its state. So let's just make sure we get everything stopped here, which I think we have. And let's bring up the quick starts here. So here I have, if you go and get the GitHub repo for the quick Dapper quick starts, you can just sync against the repo here. It pulls down all these samples. And the first one we're going to look at is this Python application here, which is this Python application that's running here that's going to be calling onto your Node application. And you'll see here that we're taking advantage of one of the other Dapper APIs, the ability to invoke a method, and we're going to call it new order on another application that's running. And you'll see here that this Python code, it creates a little message, and then it calls onto this endpoint here. And I can simply do this localhost call to call onto the other application that's running. And Dapper does all the heavy lifting of finding where the other application is, calling it. So if I just go, let's go look at the Node application that's going to call. And you'll see that there is this new order method here. This is the endpoint it's going to call. It gets the data in, It takes the data out and stores this data. So it retrieves this data. And just as like we saw before in the .NET one, where it stores it into a local Redis database, this is going to take the order data and using the state store API again to a store name, just as we did inside that, .NET one, it's going to store that state into my state store that I received. Very cool. And that state store, in this particular case, will be the Redis state store. So this is now 2 applications that can be running. And so let's spin this one up. So first we're going to run up, we're going to do this Dapper run. We're going to run this node application inside here, and we're going to launch it with the node app.js file inside here. So this spins up the node application. It has Dapper as a sidecar that helps it. That's the thing that's giving it all of its superpowers to run. So let me now switch over and just show you that Dapper is running. So that instance is running. So if we do Dapper list, you'll see there's my node application running.
Now what we're going to do is before we got our process tree, we get all of our information about the application port, the PID in the system, when it was created, how long it's been there, the gRPC port. All this stuff is really useful information, and the fact that you can just quickly snag it from a CLI command is really cool.
Super cool, yes. But what we're going to do now is we're actually going to launch. We're going to launch the other application. We're going to launch this Python application. So you see here now we're going to say I'm going to do a Dapper run. I'm going to launch my Python application here, and this is the one now that's creating these orders, and it's using Dapper to find the other application wherever it is, calling it so they can send orders to this. So I'm going to send this one up here. This spins up another instance of Dapper running my application at the same time, and you'll see now that if I go back to the first application, you'll see I'm receiving these orders because I'm calling between 2 services. I don't know where these services are. All I had to do was say, find a service for me, call it, and Dapper does all the heavy lifting of discovering where those services are and doing those calls on your behalf. And the clever thing is that it does things like retries, and it does encryption, and it does, if the other state service fails, it will find it again and recover and reconnect to it again.
So Mystic wants to know if you can open up the Python code for the application.
Yes, this Python application code here. Yes, this is the Python.
Let me just make that bigger so they can take a look. I hope that's something interesting for you. And then Kevin's got a really good question. Kevin wants to know how easy it is to update Dapper for a running application. Is there a way to see a possible breaking change? Because, I mean, I know one thing I always like to do is when I figure out how something works, I love to break it to make sure I know how to undo it.
So the question is how do I pull in the latest version of Dapper onto my machine?
How easy is it to update Dapper for running applications? So, Kevin, you could let us know if you mean update, not the version of Dapper, but the actual implementation of Dapper. Do you mean like the configuration? Kevin, I'll just ask you to clarify that. If not, you can take which way you think it should go.
I think he's asking about how is it I update Dapper on my running system, and the answer is that if you go back to the CLI and if you look at Dapper, just this latest release now, we actually introduced Dapper upgrade command. So you actually have a Dapper upgrade command here, and if you just do Dapper upgrade like this, it will actually upgrade the version of the Dapper in your running environment. In particularly, for example, if you're running this inside a Kubernetes environment, which I would like to try to show how this whole application can get deployed to.
Yeah. That would be really awesome.
So that was all running locally now. So now the question is like, great. So this is all running locally. Well, okay, how do I take this from my local running machine to running it in a place where I want to run it in production? For example, running it, for example, in Kubernetes. And the answer to that is you don't have to change a line of code. All you have to do now is take advantage of deploying Dapper into with Kubernetes deployment configuration files. So here I have exactly the same hello world. If you go and look at hello Kubernetes, there is no code here. But what we've got done is that we actually have a way of taking a Kubernetes deployment file. And if you're familiar with Kubernetes, this is a deployment file.
This is just a YAML people would put, regardless of using Dapper or anything. This is the standard manifest that they would build for Kubernetes.
Correct, it's exactly that. And so now you'll see here, instead of using the CLI to launch Dapper, which I did on my local machine, instead I say I want to Dapperize this application, and I just say I want to run this application and launch Dapper as a sidecar next to it all. And this is the name I'm going to give to it, just like we saw inside the CLI. I'm going to give it this name, and I can provide some configurations to it all. So this is all you have to do. I've taken my code and built it into a container image, which I've deployed here. And those are the only 2 steps I had to do. Build a container image and now annotate this to say to Kubernetes, launch Dapper with my application. So no code changes, just a containerization of it all. If you look at the node application, same thing. This is the node application. I actually have a little service, Kubernetes service exposed here. Here's the deployment file for it all, but same thing here. If you can see this here, I've just said, I want to launch Dapper. Here's my node application. And here's a additional port I want to run it on. So if you do this, then what you can do now is that I can actually go into these deployment files, and all I have to do is do K, apply. K stands for kubectl, by the way, in case you think instead of kubectl, I just have a shorthand for this. So you can do, here I am inside this deployment file here. Here's those files I've just looked at. So I can just do K, apply, -F, and I can do node like this. And now I've deployed my code into my Kubernetes environment. And you'll see now that if I do kget pods, and I've got a Kubernetes cluster running here, this is my node application running, just as like we had before locally. And I also have my Python application running here as well. In the same way, just to make this convenient, I installed Redis on this cluster, so I can actually store all my state into my state store inside here. So there I am, no code changes. I've deployed these applications. What we can actually go and do, we can actually go and see that there were orders being created from that last one. I can actually go and get the services inside here, and you'll see that there's a service that's being created for my node application here that we can actually go and attach to. You can actually also see that these are the Dapper services that are running as the sidecars for my application that's running, but all that's done automatically for you. So if I just go now and actually open up, let me just open up a new browser here and step in order, and I'll make this larger here. You'll see this is my new order ID here that's being updated as it's being called from the Python application to my node application, deployed into a Kubernetes cluster inside my production environment. And all I had to do was simply annotate it in the correct way and in a Kubernetes manifest. Make sense?
Makes a ton of sense. Really, really just cool. It's the productivity here. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's the ability to, advance what you need to do in a lot simpler way. And so far, that's what I'm getting for this.
Yes.
From this.
But let me show you something that's even cooler, because what Dapper does out of the box for you is it does metrics and logs gathering. So inside this Kubernetes cluster here that I've got, you'll see that I also deployed Zipkin. I actually also have Zipkin deployed in my local environment. But what I can actually do is I can actually go now and see, look at the state of what my services are looking like in the diagnostics. So what I'm going to just do here is I'm just going to do a port forward inside here. So I'm going to do a port forward. I'm just going to do a command here. I'm going to do a port forward here from my local machine, which is got for 9412 port to pointing to the Zipkin port that's running. And so now what I'm able to do is if I go back to the browser here and actually go and open up a local host 9412, you'll see that it brings up Zipkin. And now this is Zipkin running inside my Kubernetes cluster. And because Dapper does all the hard work of knowing of all calls between your services, I can actually now take advantage of building here I am, I can take advantage of building all of the calls and show all the calls between my services. So here's my node application, and here's my Python application. And I've seen all the diagnostics calls taking part between them all. And I can now go off and look at the tracing for all those. So I can go off and run a query. Here you can see, here's my Python application doing a call onto my node application. And I can see all the metrics for the Python application, then look the call time it took, it called this invoke method, and I get all of this for free.
Well, that's certainly good.
And I think this is just super cool because now I can actually see all the diagnostics. And in fact, in this particular case, this is one looking at my local cluster. I actually have also Zipkin on my local box as well. So I actually have exactly the same experience here, but this is the one that's on my local machine. So if I ran this, you'd see that here's the diagnostics I get from my local machine. So same experience, local machine, Zipkin view. In this one here, same experience of seeing the Zipkin view and all the diagnostics in my Kubernetes cluster. No code changes, but Dapr does all the heavy lifting for you to make sure that you can be deep into figuring out what's happening inside your environment.
Very cool. And so I want to remind everybody, if you have any more questions on Dapr, we're willing to hear whatever it is, try to get your questions answered. Mark has been really great about it so far. And also just want to say it's really cool to see everybody chatting in the chat today. Thanks so much. Mark, sorry for interrupting. Just want to remind everybody what an amazing kind of chunk of information we're getting from you.
Yeah, and this ability to kind of run in different environments and this ability to have this pluggable model for switching out these different components is key to making your application portable, platform agnostic. Everything I could show here, you could run on sort of a different cloud if you wanted to. And and there's a wealth of these components. I think one of the coolest things actually that the community has donated, that if you go to, let's just go to the GitHub here a moment for Dapper, and I'll make this a little larger inside here. But this is the people you can go to, and you'll see inside here there's this components contrib file. And so this is where you can come in from the community and start to build all these components to help plug in anything that you want to connect to, whether that's secret stores or state stores or publish and subscribe components. So for example,
we got like HashiCorp Vault in there, I see right away. So it's super portable, I see.
Exactly, yes. So for example, with secret stores, and this is another great benefit of Dapr, one of the things that we see all the time is there are developers who are saying, oh, I have a policy that I've got to keep all of my secrets inside something like Key Vault. For example, the connection string to my SQL Server database. And now what you can do is that Dapr provides you with a secrets API, just as you saw with that state management API, and it'll reach out into Key Vault or reach out into GCP Secrets Manager or HashiCorp Vault or even locals or in a Kubernetes store, and it'll pull down secrets for you securely so you can use them inside your applications. You can have a centralized secret store, for example.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Is there any way like you can show people the actual cluster side in the portal? I think like them having kind of the visibility of, what you've created and what it looks like in the portal could be helpful.
Yeah, well, this particular, this particular cluster I'm using here, I'm using demo 5. So this is the Kubernetes cluster I'm actually using.
Can you give us a little zoom? Sorry, just a little zoom.
Yes.
Like 2 pluses. There you go. You don't need the third. The second one is good.
Okay. So
there you go.
So this is, if it comes through,
it'll render.
It'll render. This is my Kubernetes cluster inside here. So this is just AKS inside Azure. You'll see that this is just. I'm not showing anything Dapr specific inside here. You'll just see that I can actually see this is the namespaces of where Dapr system is deployed. So Dapr itself gets deployed as a set of system services. These are the system services that that will make Dapr run first class inside here. So this is just a Kubernetes view of this.
Gotcha. Does the cluster need to be pre-built to be able to deploy from Dapr, or can Dapr handle the actual creation of, like, say, your cluster and configuring, say, service principal, stuff like that?
No, you can just have to, when you build a cluster like this, after you've built it, you can easily install this Dapr system control plane onto this. And that does all the heavy lifting for you. And to do that, actually, let me show you how you do that, because that's a pretty straightforward thing to do.
Gotcha.
If you go, you'll see here that if I do look at my cluster, I'm looking at that particular cluster. So you'll see here that there is a set of namespaces inside here. So here's my Dapper system namespace. Here's my Kubernetes namespace inside here. So if you actually go and look inside this namespace and you look at the pods inside this namespace, and if you just go namespace Dapper system, these are the Dapper system services that got deployed. And these are the things that are giving you all the heavy lifting. In fact, I'll show you the Dapper dashboard as well. But effectively, this allows me now to, this is the environment that launches the Dapper sidecars for me. And so this is doing all the heavy lifting for me in terms of Dapper running first class inside a Kubernetes environment.
And it'll go any Kubernetes, any major provider, including just pure Kubernetes on a bunch of VMs if you need it to.
Correct, yes. There actually is a Dapper dashboard command actually here. So if I do -K, what this does is it launches a dashboard that you can have. It's not a, you'll see here now I can actually view, this is the Kubernetes view of my application. You'll see that actually in this environment, I got my Node application deployed, my Python application deployed. I could actually dive into this a little bit more. I could see some information about the application here. I can see the metadata about how it got deployed inside here. I could see its configuration that set it all up because I set up some configuration.
It's all very reminiscent, and all very reminiscent of like the Kubernetes portal or deck or whatever you want to call this little portal that you get, the control panel. I feel like one of the things that we've really always kind of relied on in tech is making sure that these kind of control panels exist so that you can get a visual view of all your configs and the things that have come together. And it's nice to see that you all thought about that one as well.
Exactly, yes. And you can actually also see, like, here's the same Dapper control plane. Here's the control plane of my Dapper dashboard running inside my Kubernetes environment. I actually haven't got it set up on this one as well, but I've got there's by default, there's a dashboard for bringing up Dapper monitoring services. I actually do out of it in a little slide.
That would be really great.
If I just put up this slide here, which there's a dashboard inside this, this may be a little bit small to see, but there's dashboards inside here that shows all sorts of detail around the CPU usage, the memory usage of your applications, how they're running, and deep diagnostics around the environment that Dapper sets up for you on Kubernetes. And so this allows you to, this is a Grafana dashboard that gets created and installed for you inside your Kubernetes environment. So you sort of can do that sort of thing as well.
And is this data exportable so that you could do, like if you had a full elk stack already existing and you wanted to present it in that same, would you be able to take this data and bring it into your elk stack or whatever way of like handling visibility for your metrics?
Oh, totally. Yes, yes. I mean, this is a Grafana view. If you want to push that data out, there's a Prometheus endpoint. If you want to push that into an elk stack, you can do that sort of thing. So great. This just allows you to take all that. But it's another example of effectively of the metrics of what's happening inside your environment. Dapper is doing that for you. And that includes the telemetry and the diagnostics of your application as well as the Dapper runtime itself.
Great.
Let me give you one more little last demo here because I think there's another super.
We got about like 7 minutes left, so sure, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Because I think there's one more fun thing I think is really fun with Dapper. Dapper, if you're familiar with, if you've ever tried out functions, as in Azure functions, one of the things it has triggers and bindings.
Yep.
And you can have these triggers, input bindings and output bindings. Dapper basically took exactly the same concept and pulled it into its components as well. So you can have sort of triggers that trigger your environment and trigger your code. And then you can say, I want to set up an endpoint called trigger. And if something arrives on a Kafka queue, come and trigger my code. Or if something gets written into Event Hub, come and trigger my code. And the same with output bindings. If I wanted to say, I want to do and write a trigger that sends and writes an event into Twilio or Cosmos DB or DynamoDB or any of these other ones, you can do these output bindings. And these allow you to integrate with other systems in a very powerful way. And this is where the community has been amazing because they built all of these different, this is the full list of all of the different sort of bindings that we've built so far across everything from things inside Azure to AWS, to Ali Cloud and GCP, as well as sort of general purpose ones like HTTP. So I have one more little demo here, which takes advantage of the Twitter binding. And what this does now, if you go and look at this, I'll just open up this code here a moment here. What this does is it takes advantage of a Twitter component inside here. So you'll see now that I have this Twitter component. I just pulled in this Twitter binding and gave it all of the credentials I needed in the query. And now, if I want to just take advantage of this, I've got an application here, this is a Node application, and it just has a tweets endpoint. So I have this tweets endpoint, and now I can retrieve the tweet data from this. And then what I'm going to do is I take the tweet data and I can save it into a state store. But the important thing here is I just have this tweets endpoint bind into this Twitter input binding. And now I can actually just say, oh, I want to be able to take advantage of all the tweets. Now, the Twitter component is set up in order for it to be triggered on a particular query for some tweets. So actually, I realize I'm in the wrong directory here a moment, so I'm just going to move into a different directory here.
No problem.
And you'll see that here's my app.js file inside here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run, like we just did before here. I'm just going to do just to clear here. I'm just going to do a Dapr run again here. With this is the application is called, I'm going to call it provider. I'm going to launch, load up my list of components, and I'm going to launch this app.js file here. So this has got a tweet endpoint inside here. And so if I run this, if all goes well, it'll launch. Oh, there's a Dapr instance of this already running. I better go back and kill that other instance of it. It was running inside here, wasn't it? Here we go. We better kill that. It was on the same port. Okay. So if I just run this again, I'll kill that other instance. So now it's going to start up my application, and now it's taking advantage of Dapr bindings. And once it's launched, every time someone's tweeting about Microsoft, these are all the tweets that are coming in here, and they're being pushed into my my application. So I can just retrieve all these tweets and build an application that just staves tweets or does sentiment analysis on the tweets. So someone asking earlier about, oh, how do I hook up, say, maybe something like some input binding and then sort of do some sentiment analysis on it. This is a super easy way of sort of hooking up that to external systems. And I think inside my Redis store here, my query, let me see if I can do one more attempt at this. Redis to local host, and I think I've still got. See here. Look here. I saved. Now all of those tweets that came in. These are all those tweets I saved that came in from that particular tweet that came in from the tweet binding. You see that this tweet came in, and hopefully it's this is all about, the tweet was all about finding any tweets that were about cats. So it was super easy for me now to write code where I get triggered on external bindings, call onto my code, and then build an application like that. Make sense?
Very cool. I think that I learned so much today, Mark. And so I'm going to make sure everybody knows that, one, we can find you on Twitter at mfussell. And then, of course, I've put a bunch of links in here. But let's just remind everyone that the big thing is that the new version of Dapper and its release candidate, you can find the link right here, RC3. I want to thank you so much for being part of this, Mark.
Okay.
And if we can do this again about something deeper on Dapper.
Yeah. We can.
You know how to find me. Mark, thank you so much for this today. I really appreciate it. And I know all of our viewers do. If you want to rewatch this would be on the Azure DevOps YouTube. It'll also be on my YouTube. You can find it on Twitch, especially for MS Developer, all these places. We'll be posting it out in a blog post later today. Thanks so much again, Mark.
It's been fantastic being here.
Great. Let's give everybody a good wave goodbye and let them know how much we appreciated them. We'll see you next week. We will be back with another great piece of information about how you can get the most out of Azure. So we'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day and an awesome weekend.